This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello, world. It's me, Dennis, and I have just met a new friend, Ed Hooks. Hi, Ed.
Hey, hi, Dennis. Hey, it's so good to be here.
Well, it's lovely to see you. Here we are in the fourth quarter of our lives, and really, it is a time of such amazing change. I mean, we're seeing change happen faster than we've ever had before, and we're still connecting to that humanity. And when I read your bio, when I got a chance to see the span of your work is just astonishing. So I really want to go to one of my favorite questions, and so that I can get a chance to get a sense of Ed Hooks. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. Who, where, and when were you 18 years old?
Oh, my goodness. I was 18 years old. I was still in the military. I was in the Air Force.
Yes.
I was 18. I was in Washington, D.C., Andrews Air Force Base. And I was in the Air Force for 4 years. And
what year was that?
1964. I'm 77 now. And yeah.
Perfect. Now, why did you decide to join the Air Force from high school? You decided, I mean, who were you in high school?
Oh, man. I was going to get drafted.
Yes.
To tell you the truth, back during those days, you didn't really want to get drafted if you didn't have to. And so I went ahead and joined the Air Force. I wasn't the best soldier in the world, I got to tell you. I'm pretty much of an independent person, but I was there, and I was a computer operator. I ran the computers and data processing and all of that there at Andrews Air Force Base, which was the presidential airport. So I was there when John Kennedy was assassinated. As a matter of fact, those photographs of the airplane after he was brought back, his body was brought back from Dallas with Jackie, and she had on that pink outfit, and it's very famous footages. And then LBJ got up to the microphone and he said, "I'll do the best I can. That's all I can do." I was there. I was no more than 25, 30 yards away from that. I was waiting to go on leave and they froze the airport. They wouldn't let anybody leave or come in until the presidential jet returned with John Kennedy's body. So, it was one of those Forrest Gump moments.
Yeah.
That I was just there. And in history, that was a very big moment in the United States. And I had a front row seat. I'm not sure it's a good thing to have a front row seat about, but I did.
It's part of our history. And so then, all right, so you get out of the Air Force.
Yeah.
And so there you are. Like I got out of the Army. I did a 3-year hitch also as a computer operator. We did those data, had the stacks of cards, where you fed the punch cards in and worked the whole process at that time.
Right.
So I got out in 1973. And you got out. So you got out in what year?
It was 1966.
All right. So you're out in 66.
Yeah.
We're beginning. The Vietnam protests are going on, and you're looking at the world and what's going on within you. What do you
Oh,
want to do? What would interest you? What impels you?
At that time, it was an interesting thing because when I was a kid, I had it in my head I wanted to be an actor, and then I got I got to summer stock when I was a kid. I was fortunate to become an apprentice at a summer stock company, and I met actors who really didn't know what they were going to be doing next week, and it was a sobering experience. As I still loved acting, but I tried to get serious and do something else. I just said, well, this is not a way to have a career. And so I used the computer skills from the military, and I went to work for a company there in Washington, D.C. And, but I was not happy with that kind of work. I really knew that I wanted to be in theater. And in 1969, I gave all that up and created a different narrative for my life and moved to New York. And that was where I got my training. And I was in New York until 1976, did a lot of plays, stage plays, commercials, and then went to Los Angeles and started working there. And
all right, hold on. You're moving too fast for me because still when you're sitting there leaving the job and going to New York, I know that when I first went to LA in 1978, I actually thought I went to downtown LA thinking that I was going to be at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, and instead I'm with these hotels and this. I mean, I was that completely ignorant. All right, so you show up in New York. What happens?
Oh man. Well, for me at that time, New York was a backdrop on the Tonight Show.
Yes. With Johnny Carson.
And he had behind him on the television, he had a skyline of Manhattan, nighttime Manhattan. And, it's a funny thing. You can't imagine that you actually belong. It becomes like another planet. And I remember when I first arrived in New York and walking around around Times Square and Herald Square in that area, and looking at these huge, huge buildings, the Empire State Building and all that, and it was a beginning. It was sort of like getting born for me. I really feel in many ways that my real life actually started when I moved to New York. Wow. Suddenly I was no longer in the South. I was where I was born.
Which was where in the South?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Got it.
I was born in Georgia, and we moved all around the South, but Atlanta was my base. And it was I was born and raised in the Jim Crow South.
Yes, we saw this from the white male privilege perspective. We actually got to see and experience separate but equal.
We sure did, and I was, the thing is that you don't know. You're a kid, and you don't know what you're being taught in school. You think this is all the information there is. I didn't know any people of another color. I didn't have anybody in the school with me. It was modern day Confederacy, and I mean 1950s kind of Confederacy. Yep. That's what I was raised in. Well, I get to New York, and you've got every variety of vegetable in the garden. And and suddenly I'm around worldly people, international people, artistic, creative, and my life began, and I started recreating myself in a way. I was at that time 24 years old, and I was burning with creativity. It was such a learning period, and I just ate it up. It was I wound up doing something like 35 plays in New York on off Broadway, all this experimental stuff, Edward Albee, and that was the early days of Sam Shepard. And it was, it was just a creative running around the clock. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to ask, because right now we're going through this huge change. You and I both, and my wife and I, and your wife and you, we all watched the last movie star, which is the Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, the Ethan Hawke wonderful piece. But they talk about this was the time of such shifts in the society when we were going from where we are all cookie cutter, Don Draper, Mad Men, to wait a minute, it's a blank canvas. You're going to have to recreate what you're going to have to create whatever it is going to be on that canvas. And that can be scary.
It was scary. It was experimental. Theater itself. See, when I came into theater, I wanted to do Death of a Salesman and Macbeth, and I wanted to do the Crucible, these kind of things. I got there, and they were doing theater of the absurd. They weren't doing those kind of plays when I got there. They were doing experimental theater. It was Ionesco. And they were doing plays where you'd get on stage and wind up sitting in the audience's lap. It was. I mean, I remember doing a play with about a giant cockroach attacking New York and trying to come in the windows, and I was playing a transvestite from Queens, and I had a yellow print dress and it was fiery days, but it was changing. Everything was changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your consciousness and the consciousness of Ed. So you're growing right now as an artist. You're beginning to see, okay, this is my passion. I want to, and so your drive was to act, was your drive to teach, drive to directing, to get behind. What was that going on in your consciousness?
Well, I was trying to get auditions. I was trying to get paid. And for me, there was here's where some frustration for an actor set in. I'm a very non-threatening kind of looking guy, as you can see. So I would meet a talent agent and I would say, I want to audition for the Broadway plays.
Yes.
And they would say, well, if something comes up, Ed, we're going to keep you in mind. But you know what? They would say, they're having auditions this afternoon for a Pampers commercial over at Benton and Bowles. I think you should get over there. So they sent me for commercials, and I wound up doing, I don't know how many commercials, Dennis, maybe 100 of them, a lot.
Wow.
All these Fortune 500 companies. I was a working actor. I made money that way. It paid the rent. And then I would do these plays usually for no money. And then in the summer, I go out and do summer stock and pick up some money there. But I was not doing Death of a Salesman.
Right.
I was not doing those things that I really wanted to do when I came to New York. And that was when in 1976, I picked up and went to Los Angeles. And I figured, well, if all these advertisers, these big companies want me to be in their commercials, and these TV shows exist in order to deliver good-humored consumers to the commercials, then it figures probably I can get on these TV shows. That was my logic. And indeed, that's the way it worked out. I became a working character actor in Hollywood. And so
that's amazing. And were you learning the storytelling, the art? Because in your career, as you have moved into teaching, acting, and working that, this is the learning about the character, learning about this craft of acting, learning about the storytelling from the inside out, and all. So did that begin to germinate in your consciousness?
Sure. Well, that actually started for me in New York. I started really becoming aware of structure, and I learned. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I studied with a couple of other people that were very famous teachers at the time. But I learned more about acting doing those crazy plays off Broadway and off Broadway, because a lot of times those plays were badly written, and you got to make them work. So in school, you're working with Death of a Salesman. You're working with kitchen, kitchen tested material, and you know that if you just find the key, that it'll work. That's right. Well, when you're working with original material, you don't know that. There may be, no matter what you do, it's still not going to be any good. So you learn how to take something that's nothing and make it seem like it's something. In Hollywood, this skill paid off, you see, because so much of television is badly written. So I became a character actor. They knew that they could call me and tell me to be there tomorrow. You could give me a couple of pages out of a telephone book, and I could make it seem like it was something. And so most of my work as an actor in Hollywood was co-star, guest star, and I was usually in the scenes with whoever was the star of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I became a very fast study, one take kind of character actor, a working character actor. And now, the next step to this, and I know you're going to ask me this, is about teaching. I got to the point where I was working on all these TV shows that I wouldn't watch because I thought they were not good. You know,
they were banal. I mean, this is just banal. I mean, we're talking about the difference in. I mean, when people talk about classical music, right? I mean, not all classical music is incredible. There is great classical music, and then there's the same with rap, or the same, and it's the same with television. You have the span of it, and then you have the part that is truly the Larry Gelbarts and the Danny Arnolds and that end up creating things that are iconic. So I get that. So you're deciding, and what happens?
Well, I began to teach. So that's when I started teaching acting, because I found that I was actually feeling more creatively satisfied by communicating with other people about what acting could and should be, and this business of storytelling. And in the daytime, I was working on these shows and getting paid. And so I wound up with an acting studio in Los Angeles, and I had another one in San Francisco. So I had students that I taught, people that were working in the industry. It was professional level acting training, and I became very well known as an actor, and I mean as a teacher. And I wrote several books for actors at that time, and during all that.
And where was the satisfaction level, the personal artistic level as you were beginning? Because it was very hard for me. I did not want to be a director because I did not want to get from out in front of the camera. I love the limelight, and it wasn't until I got behind the camera and I began to do directing and I began to do that I began to see, God, what a joy! But boy, that was a hard transition for me.
Yeah, but it's a good one. It's a good one. I want to hear about your transition to directing. I became, although I was a teacher, I think I became a student. That was when I really got serious about what acting was. Humans as storytelling animals. Why do people even watch plays? Why do they go to movies? All of this in my storehouse of knowledge became pretty vast. I developed a skill set that was very broad spectrum, and I could teach people how to act on camera, and I could teach them how to act on stage, and it was satisfying to me. And in the meantime, I would continue to do these these roles. When they would call me, I would go to LA, or we moved to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, and I would commute back and forth. But that became my life, and then in 1996, I was invited to teach an acting class to a group of animators for the first time. And I didn't know anything about animation. I didn't know. And
were you a fan? Were you a fan of the Bugs? I mean, was cartooning in this part of your growing up, or part of something that you?
No, I knew that I was upset about Bambi's mother. I knew that Jiminy Cricket was cute. It was there was those kind of things, but I was a garden variety admirer of animated movies and whatnot. I liked Roadrunner, these things. Yeah. I had my favorites, but I did not know anything about how animation was created.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, one of my San Francisco acting students, you never know what your acting students do to put food on the table. Everybody wants to be a good actor, but actors are often working what you call jobs, as you know. So they're driving a cab, they're waiting tables, they're a bartender, all these things. And you don't talk about that. You just talk about acting. And one night after one of my classes, one of my students who had been with me in scene study for a year or more, he said to me, look, I work for an animation company and we're making a movie. He said, I told him about you, and we want to know, will you come over and teach an acting class at the studio? I said, sure, why not? I said, what do I know? What do I know, Dennis?
So isn't that the truth? We never know those moments, those moments we look back that are such pivotal moments, but at the time we just go, oh.
Exactly. So I go in there and to teach these animators. There was about 30 of them. And the movie they were making was called Ants, A-N-T-Z, with Woody Allen.
Yes.
Okay. And as it turned out, that movie was only the second computer animated movie ever. The first one was Toy Story. But I didn't know that. I didn't know anything. I went in there and I tried to teach the animators the same way I taught actors. I thought that if you needed to learn how to act, the way that you act is you get up and you act. I went in and I gave them scenes and improvisations and things to do. And by the third class or so, half of them wouldn't come to class. They were busy. And the ones that were coming to class were not doing the work. And I had never experienced this. My classes in acting in Los Angeles and San Francisco were popular. People did what I said. They were professional classes, and that's when the human resources people took me to lunch.
And that's when HR when HR takes you to lunch, you know that there's something that we're going to need to deal with.
Oh man, it was terrible. It was just awful, Dennis. So they took me to lunch at a little Italian restaurant, and the first thing they said to me, there was these two women, and the first thing they said is, "Well, Ed, it's not working." And I said, I know, I was embarrassed. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't understand. I've never encountered this kind of situation before. I've never had students not show up to class and not do the work. And they said, well, Ken Bielenberg, now that was my student, the one in the acting class that had invited me. Ken Bielenberg tells us that you're a good acting teacher, and we believe him. So if you want to try experimenting or try something else, we'll keep you on the payroll, but you have to stop doing what you're doing. And I said, okay. Now that was when I found out that my student, Ken Bielenberg, was the head of visual effects, which at that time even didn't mean much to me, but he was high up in the hierarchy of this production. I did not know this. So he had credibility. So when I screwed up and they weren't being taught right, he vouched for me and they kept me on. So what happened was I get the animators back together and I said to him, I said, look, I said, I know about acting. I really do. I said, but I don't know anything about animation. And I said, you need to show me how you do what you do. And I need to shut up. I said, until I understand it. And when I understand it, then maybe I can come up with a way to tell you what I know in a way that's going to be useful. Okay. So they gave me a chair with rollers, and I went around from animator to animator and sat with them while they animated that movie. And they just talked to me and I talked to them. And then I had my big aha moment. And that was, as you know, actors work in the present moment. So if I could reach out and touch your cheek, you would have a reaction, and I would react to your reaction, and you would react to my reaction. So actors work on that, on being in the moment and being relaxed, being focused, concentrated, all of this. Well, animators don't have a present moment. They've got 24 frames make a second. They have an illusion of a present moment. So once I got a hold of this, I said, well, this is why they left the class. They're not actors. They don't need, I'm trying to teach them how to act, and they don't need to know how to act. They need to understand how acting works. And yeah. And
well, oh my God, that insight is just like suddenly like when you see the DNA, when you suddenly you get into the DNA of what the animation is all about, and you go, oh my God, it's a double helix.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. It was a eureka moment. And so I invented a way of teaching them acting theory. I reduced acting theory to 8 or 10 principles. And then I started showing them clips from movies and TV shows about how it works. And so I would say to them, okay, there's an acting error in this scene. I'm going to show you. I want you to tell me what it is. And they would look at the scene. Often they knew that there was an acting error, but they didn't know why. Exactly. And so I codified it for them. I showed them why. And after the movie came out, there was no literature at all, none, and on this, because I had tried to find it. And so I wrote Acting for Animators. I wrote the first Acting for Animators, which was my attempt to apply classical acting theory to animation. Nobody wanted to publish it. because they kept telling me that there's plenty of acting books, and I kept saying, yeah. And
but wait a minute.
Yeah. I kept telling the publishers, I said, no, these people are different. They don't have a present moment. They could be. And the publishers didn't know what I was talking about. I finally got it published. So that, the long story short, if it's not too late for that, it was that book is now published by Routledge. It's been through 4 editions. It'll soon come out in a 5th revised edition. And overnight, I pretty much became the go-to guy having to do with acting in animation. I began to be invited to speak, to give talks on this subject. And Dennis, you're not going to believe this, but I have now taught a masterclass in acting for animators in over 35 countries. And it's been hundreds of thousands of animators, a generation of animators that
exactly.
I've been so privileged to do what I do, and it's because of this skill set that started back in New York doing crazy plays off Broadway. What I did was I went back to Aristotle. And Aristotle said in the Poetics, every human action has a purpose. That's acting. That's it. If you understand that, you're halfway there. And so Stanislavski never really improved on Aristotle. What he did was he codified it and added conflict and some script analysis. And so I just went back and recomputed all this stuff. Starting back with Aristotle, and so I didn't mean that's it. That brings me to the present time. I'm still doing it, and yeah. So, but I do keep my finger in the theater.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.